Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open in the kingdom of Chirac at the coronation of the Prince Kassim. Just as he's crowned, his stepmother Zenobia uses her dark magic to transform him into a baboon, which is at least better than a llama. She does this to install her spoilt brat of a son Rafi on the throne without spilling any royal blood, because that stuff will get you cursed. Sometime later, the Prince of Baghdad Sinbad arrives at Chirac to marry the prince's sister, but finds the city under curfew. Most of his crew go get jiggy with the belly dancers, while Sinbad and his first mate Hassan are given shelter by Rafi, who pretends to be a friend. Fortunately, they also bring along their wine tester because he reveals a poison inside the sailor's drink, so Rafi busts out the sword. However, he can't fight and Sinbad has wicked kicks, so he's easily disarmed and forced to explain what he's done with the prince. Suddenly his mommy shows up to save her baby boy and summons a trio of claymation ghouls that have big bug eyes and crude weapons. They try to assassinate Sinbad in stop motion, so Hassan stabs one through the heart, but it just pulls the blade out and spanks his little bottom. During the fight, the tent begins to burn down, so Zenobia and her cowardly son scurry away while the fight spills out onto the streets. Sinbad crushes the animations beneath a large pile of logs, then flees to his ship, which doesn't get a name and is just called Sinbad's ship. On the way, he finds his love interest Princess Farah hiding in some barrels of fish, so he tosses her into the ocean out of the kindness of his heart. They swim to his ship to escape the witch's magic, and once on board, Farah gets out her body and braids to vaguely explain what happened. It's pretty simple. Her brother Kassim is now a monkey, but she doesn't even mention that part, so we wait until morning to meet Mr. Exposition. Balsora is Farah's concerned uncle and says they have 7 months to cure the prince's baboonification, or else Rafi will be named king. Sinbad must oblige if he's going to marry the princess, but before they set sail, Zenobia arrives to pretend she didn't just try to kill everybody. Farah is the only one with the balls to shank the witch on sight, but gets held back because of the whole spilling royal blood curse thing. They could just have one of the seamen like Maroof do it, but instead Zenobia learns that they're sailing to the island of Kaskar from Farah's emotional outburst. She plans to beat them there and kill anybody who can cure monkification, so Balsora orders his cycloptic soldier Zabid to keep his eye on her. Farah tries to smuggle Kassim on board without the crew noticing, but they drop the cage, so now everybody knows we're transporting a monkey. The only seaman who learns that it's the prince besides Sinbad is Hassan when he spots him playing chess with Farah. Out of fear, it attacks him, so Sinbad lets him in on the secret, and the baboon writes his name on the wall just to prove it. They depart for the island of Kaskar, but are followed by Zenobia and Rafi as soon as they finish forging a large bronze minotaur. The automaton, creatively named Minoton, is brought to life with a mechanical heart and used to row their boat because somebody forgot to install sails. Zabid and his men spot them leaving, so try to board, but they're in a tiny fishing boat, so Minnie just crushes it beneath the ship. Upon noticing Zabid survives, Zenobia orders her tin man to skewer him out of the water with a fishing gaff before they continue to the island. Sinbad's crew have just arrived and begin their search for a hermit called the smartest man on earth so that he can unbaboon our prince. Upon reaching a temple carved into a cliff, the explorers get attacked by the rock-throwing natives, who luckily haven't developed any accuracy. A young woman named Dione calls them off to ask why the outsiders have come looking for her father. Sinbad says monkey bad, prince good, so she takes them across a green screen to meet Dad, who's standing up on a ridge waving like a goofball. This woman can telepathically communicate with her father, but they're Greek, so they call it telepathia to be all fancy about it. It's never used again, and her father Melanthius is very welcoming, but the way he shouts everything makes it seem like he's always angry.
You're a brave man, Captain Sinbad. It's only for that I've agreed to see you.
They show him the monkey prince, who's been aggressive towards every new person he's met until Dione, who he just licks the hand of. This is doubly disturbing when we learn that the prince doesn't even know he's a baboon and still thinks he's a human laid out naked like this. It's only when he sees his reflection does Kassim realize that he's got monkey face and begins crying, because nobody likes having monkey face. Unless your name is Dione, who flirts with her primitive love interest by bringing him bananas while Dad comes up with a plan. Mel says that the only way to cure him is to sail to the island of Hyperborea, depicted here in this very well illustrated map. They'll find a pyramidic shrine that contains anti-monkey magic, and this key that he just happens to have lying around will open the door. If this strange contraption can break this beaker, then Mel will accompany Sinbad, and it does, but doesn't explain why. When they leave Kaskar, they pass Zenobia and Rafi stuck on the reef because they don't have the same navigation skills that Sinbad has. Zenobia decides to transform into a seagull and spies on the sailors while her son trails behind at the speed of a rowing Minoton. Once aboard Sinbad's ship, she turns back into a human but remains tiny so she can listen in on their conversation. She sneaks inside the cabin, however Baboon Kassim notices the little woman and breaks out of his cage to alert the others. Mel captures the witch and sticks her inside a jar to question, but tells Sinbad to take the girls away because things are going to get messy. He threatens to throw a wasp inside the jar unless she tells him why she's here, but Zenobia spots the map and memorizes the way to the island. Finding one of her potions, Mel assumes that it turned her back into a human, so he tests it on the wasp to see if it will work on the prince. It just grows to an enormous size and attacks Mel, causing him to accidentally knock over the jar and allow the witch to escape. She slurps up some of the potion and turns back into a seagull, while Sinbad arrives to battle the wasp and kills it with a throwing dagger. He isn't able to prevent Zenobia from escaping, however, so she flies back to her son, where she draws down everything she remembers from the map. They continue their mission, but with an insufficient amount of potion to fully reverse the transformation, the witch retains a gull foot for the remainder of the movie. Meanwhile, the prince loses his ability to play chess and will keep losing his humanity until they can cure his monkification. They arrive at the polar regions surrounding the island, which Sinbad navigates through until finding a passage into the interior. Once they can't travel any further, the crew disembark and walk inland across the ice in search of a pyramid. Their first interruption comes from a giant walrus, so all the seamen grab their spears and throw giant snowballs. The creature destroys most of their supplies and knocks one man into the slushy waters, while the rest try to capture it in a net. When that doesn't work, Walrus Giganticus steps on another seaman and makes for the ocean with Maroof tangled up in the net. Hassan and Sinbad barely manage to cut him free before the monster disappears into the water, so the group continue on with their mission. Eventually coming across the warm interior of the island called Hyperborea, they celebrate because now the girls can get out their midriffs. While the sailors set up camp, Farah and Dione go skinny dipping in the first body of water they find and sunbathing on some rocks. Along comes a giant troglodyte with a horn on its head, so the pair run away because this thing is horrifying looking. Sinbad prepares to duel the monster, however Mel says that this thing might be friendly, so he sends his daughter over to check. Fortunately, it doesn't just squish her into the ground, and Kassim comes over to let it be known that this woman is Baboon's woman. They come up with the idea of sweet-talking the Trog into helping them find the pyramid, so their local guide shows them the way. For some reason, Farah trips over everything until arriving at a large ominous gate that the Trog is afraid to go near. The pyramid is on the other side, so upon seeing the tiny humans unafraid of approaching the entrance, he walks up and removes the crossbeam. Inside they find the pyramid called the Shrine of the Four Elements, absorbing a beam of light from the Aurora Borealis. While they begin making the walk towards it, Zenobia and Rafi have finally located the tunnel and sail into the island interior. Their icebreaker makes it much further up the underground river than Sinbad's ship, and they're able to pop out right beside the pyramid. Since they don't have the key, however, Zenobia forces an entrance using magic and her Colossus removes the large block. It trips over, however, and Minnie gets crushed beneath his own clumsiness, but revealed an entrance for the witch and her son. When Sinbad's party arrives, Mel says that the shrine has now been destabilized and all of the magic is seeping out of the hole. The key is now useless, but they still go inside because there might be enough magic juice left to turn Kassim back into a human. They enter the shrine's main chamber, which is covered in a layer of ice, and the guardian Sabretooth has been frozen into a solid block. The prince must enter a gold cage and pass through the beam of light, but the room begins to melt, causing icicles to fall from the ceiling. Zenobia appears and orders Rafi to kill Mel, however Kassim protects his girlfriend's father by rolling the limp-necked son down the stairs. He breaks it, hitting the ground, so the mother becomes overcome with grief and sits here doing nothing for the next few minutes. She watches as they place the baboon inside the cage and raise him into the beam of light, which breaks the curse and turns Kassim back into a human. He's embraced by his sister and shows his gratitude to Sinbad, however before he can lick Dione's hand, the place begins to collapse. They all run away, but Zenobia transfers herself into the guardian and breaks free from its icy prison to prevent them from escaping. The troglodyte comes to their aid wielding Minotaur's Gaffy spear and engages the Sabretooth in some stop-motion combat. It protects the group as they sneak around to the entrance, however the three remaining sailors stay behind to try help Trog. The giant gets disarmed, so he beats the cat around with his bare hands until it eventually turns the tables and Trog is defeated. He's killed before the humans start poking at the Sabretooth with their swords, but it just swats all three of them away with its claws. Maroof dies after surviving this whole time, so an injured Sinbad picks up the giant gaff and prepares for the witch to leap at him. When she does, he impales the Sabretooth, then finishes it off with his sword, presumably killing the guardian and the witch as well. Collecting the injured Hassan, they escape with the rest of the party before the pyramid collapses in on the shrine. The whole of Hyperborea becomes covered in snow and the warm weather is replaced with freezing winds, so they flee back to the ship. Everything wraps up rather quickly from here as they return to Chirac, where Kassim gets his long-awaited promotion. Presumably he shacks up with Dione and Sinbad marries Farah, while an overlay of eyes suggests that Zenobia will return. And the movie ends.